Welcome to another episode of the HealthCast. I'm super excited to have Rohit Bassi, founder of PQ, the People Quotient, author of The People Priority, and lifetime investor operator in PE. Welcome, Rohit.
Phil, thank you for having me. Really excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. Let's dive right into it. You have a pretty diverse background in the financial world. Why don't you start from maybe how you got started to where you're at today? Kind of an overview.
Yeah, I'll keep it short because it is a long background. But the short version is born in India, grew up in New Zealand, mechanical engineer by training, moved to the US for business school, went to Wharton. And then the next 20 years was all about private equity. I joined McKinsey's private equity practice. Back then, it was still being developed. So it was early days of the practice, but got to serve some major global private equity clients. Then went on to run a private equity backed business, which was a B2B services business based in the US. It was super fun. Got to run small P&Ls that are $3 million to several $100 million P&Ls, lead people from like a few people on the team to several thousand. So that was a great experience. And we exited to KKR, which is a really fun part, mostly because of the fact that you only read about that stuff in business school, but to be part of the industry changing deal, that was really cool experience, learned a lot. And then moved to buy side, which is private equity, buying companies and then helping them grow. And so oversaw about a portfolio of 12 companies, did a lot of M&A underneath it across two different funds. And after all of that, I sort of reflected on the things that I love doing, things that I enjoy. And that brought me to People Quotient, which is what I built a couple of years ago, having left PE as an insider to be somebody who's on the outside helping the industry, but just helping privately owned businesses globally. And People Quotient is the name of the company. What I say is, individuals have EQ and IQ, whereas companies have PQ. And it was the PQ that I found every time either myself or others invested in, helped develop, the company flourished. And that's where, more value was created, people were happy, and you actually created a business that served its customers really well. So that's what brought me to PQ now. And that's where I am today.
That's fantastic. And you have a book coming out.
I do. Yes, the People Priority. It's coming out on St. Patty's Day. Didn't pick that day specifically because of St. Patty's Day, but it happened to be one. So it's a great day to release the book. It's my first book. It is a book where it's for CEOs, but really for anyone who has a managerial hat on. And so you could be a middle manager to a CEO or an investor. And it comes out on March 17th, available for purchase on March 18th worldwide. We can talk more about the book, but I'm super excited to bring it to the market.
That's cool. So you did some writing. I'm wondering if it was journaling or whatnot, and that led you to first the book came to formation, and then from there you developed your company.
Yeah, most people build a business, scale it, grow it, and then there's like, okay, now I want to reflect on what I've done and share it with the world. I did it sort of, in my language, ass backwards, because I found that I wrote the book primarily because when I reflected on my 20 years in private equity, I really spent some time thinking about two things. One, what am I actually good at? What is it that I enjoy?
Sure.
And two, what is it that I consistently did to add value to businesses, to really help businesses scale? And it always came down to the single thing, which is people. I love working with people. I love developing people. I love learning from people. Like my motto is every day, learn and teach. And so for me, that was at the core of I wanted to do something with people. But not surprisingly, when I did the analysis of 20 years of private equity across whether it was clients or deals or companies or P&Ls, it always came down to getting the right people in the right seats for the context of the business is what made the difference, right? And so I wanted to write a book because I wanted to do something that was scalable, right? That helped millions of business owners worldwide because the people problem or people challenge, I should say, is universal. It's evergreen. It's always going to be something that people are going to need people to help companies build. And I've sort of realized that that's something I should write about because I've built 50, 60, 100 P&Ls or management teams, whether it's from ground up or tweaked it or brought people in, whatever the permutation be, safe to say over 100 P&Ls is something that I've been able to impact at that management level. And so for me, that's when I wrote the book. And what the book is about in a quick second, it's about talent acquisition, because when I go back to how do you solve the people problem, I think you solve it one element at a time. And the foundational element is how to attract and acquire the right talent, what questions you ask, how do you do diligence. So I applied a very A mindset to talent acquisition, which is A, the language I speak, but B, also I feel like that discipline and diligence and efficiency that's in M&A is something that talent acquisition really, really needs in the market today, especially given founders are time poor, CEOs have no time or capacity to do things. And so when I gave that book to a lot of people, mostly CEOs and investors and worldwide, I got an overwhelming pull from the market, which is, hey, the book's great. It's spot on in terms of what's been missing, but can you also help us implement it? And so that's what led to implementation. And that's what built the rest of the business. Cause then I realized, hang on, when I go into the businesses and I help them think through their talent operations, what's really coming to the forefront is
Mhm.
the leadership theme and how they're organized. Because as you know, it's like everything we do, Phil, which is you ask one question and then 10 others reveal themselves. And so really what that led to was the formation of people quotient, because I'm like, you know what, what's missing in the world is PQ. Everyone is born with IQ. They have EQ that they develop, but companies have PQ and that's just missing. And so long way of answering your question, but that's how the journey evolved.
No, I've asked you it a couple times, and I'm laughing at myself because I understand that. So you were in this diverse financial career, successful financial career. I'm not sure if you walked away, but then you wrote a book, shared it with others, and they wanted your services. Is what you're saying? That's how PQ as a business then developed. First, it was just this
100.
collection of ideas to instruct and share what you've learned, and then from there, people were like, "This is fantastic. We want you to help us."
Yeah, and you look, writing a book is the least finance guy thing to do because writing books doesn't make you money. Like
Yeah.
the actual book is not a great revenue. If you're already famous, then maybe, but I'm
Mm.
not. So I think it was the worst investment choice from a pure financial perspective, but the best purpose driven choice that I had, which actually led me to write it. I was going to write it anyway because I think I want the world to know it. But you're right. It's the reverse. Following the demand is really what I've been taught all my life. That follow what the market wants, give the
Yeah.
market what it needs. I decided to for once listen to that wholeheartedly, and I haven't walked away from private equity because I'm still helping a lot of private equity investors. But I'm also now able to help all company owners, all business owners worldwide, agnostic of whether they're backed by private equity or not. PE is just because I speak the language. It's a lot. I understand it. I've been in their shoes. But this is a book that applies to everyone in the world, anywhere they are.
That's fantastic. And I think it speaks volumes of your skill set and that these business leaders, Rohit, come on, help us and give us some insight. So kudos to you for that,
Yeah,
for
thank
having
you.
the,
And it's early days. Lots to do still. I'm only in a year and a half, 2 years in, but really a year and a half in, and so looking forward to helping as many companies as I can because that's what I enjoy doing. Helping other people figure out the problems that I either might have figured out myself or together we can figure it out as well. Specifically as relates to PQ.
yeah. Books coming out soon. Tell
Yep.
us about how your business has been going. How are things since launching? How have things been?
Yeah, good. Look, like every entrepreneur, you've got growing pains. So I'm not going to lie. Like, you're like, hey, how do I, there's the tactics and the tactical elements of running a business, which is widely spoken. And you can speak to any entrepreneur, they'll tell you the exact same thing. But on the strategic side, it's been going well. For me, the thing that I'm really excited about this year is to get in front of as many companies as possible because I fundamentally believe that we are running out of time. And I will always believe that because as a business owner, you never have enough time. And so for me, the sooner I can get in front of more companies, more private equity funds, more privately held businesses, the more impact I can have in their business and they can actually, more importantly, have in their business. Right. And so the business is going really well. I've already gotten clients that are in Canada, US, UK, Australia, and I'm a tiny startup. So for me, I'm really grateful that I've got that, but I'm also excited by it and excited by the challenge of how am I going to, which actually proved my thesis that what I'm solving for is actually universal. What I'm solving for is industry agnostic. What I'm solving for is something everyone else is looking to solve themselves and are looking for a consistent way of doing it. So I'm excited. I'm excited, Phil. This year is going to be super fun, and I'm looking forward to for your audience that's listening in, if they've got if anyone's like, hey, I think I need to understand my people better, or I'm not sure if I've got the right team. Hey, reach out. I'd love to help.
I get this sense of passion and enthusiasm from you, and I wanted
Yeah.
to know about some of your drivers. What's motivating that?
Yeah, look, I'm always motivated by a few different ways to answer your question. First is people, which is obvious, and I've already sort of spoken to that, in this
Yeah,
conversation. Me, when I've reflected on everything I've done in personal level or the professional level, it just comes down to people. So what I'm most passionate about is helping founders, CEOs, investors figure that out. But at a deeper level, what motivates me is that I love to share whatever I know with whoever is willing to listen, but more importantly, I can help. And that could be, here are the mistakes I made. I'm just telling you that maybe so you can avoid them. Or here are the things I got right and consistently. And so I'm going to give you my recipe because what I'm fueled by is while we're on this planet, why not just share what we know? And so I'm really excited by that. And I want to obviously offer that up in a systematic way, in a consistent way, so it becomes more of a system rather than thoughts and ideas.
yeah.
And so, which is why I've got the business and the structure around it. But fundamentally what drives me is how can I help people? How can I help business owners? And that's why I've got people that used to be my McKinsey analysts years ago and still call me up for ideas and advice. Not because I'm the source of all ideas and advice. It's just that they know that they can reach out at any time for help. And so I just get, that's what fuels me. And everything we've discussed so far and everything I'm building is fueled by helping people anywhere they are in the world because I've lived in 7 countries. And so I've enjoyed the benefits of being uncomfortable in cultures and then becoming comfortable, standing and appreciating humanity at a different level. Fundamentally, we're all the same and we all need help. And so my goal is to help out.
I love what you're saying. I think that I think most people do, and something that I've been experiencing through my podcast and working with industry, business leaders of all different types, whether it's healthcare, in the financial world, or anywhere in between, is that especially as we talk about technology, I'm finding this emphasis on relationships.
Yeah.
I think people initially, or you hear questions like, "Oh, maybe AI is going to steal my job or something," but really, it's about automation, expediting things, or administrative tasks to get back to promoting human relationships. It doesn't matter the sphere, and I take a lot of comfort in that, and what you're saying aligns with that as well. So,
Yeah,
uh,
and I'm glad you brought up AI. I think one of the things I tell CEOs and anyone really in my sphere is that yes, AI is going to improve efficiency. Many years ago, people had lots of other forms of automation. We've gone through decades of continuous improvement programs, right? And yes, that will lead to loss of certain jobs, and because there'll be automation. Two things I say to people. Number one is you're always going to need people to do that work. So ultimately there'll be fewer people left. So the importance of who you have on your team has now exponentially gone up. You better make sure whoever's left is the best you can afford, is best for your company and what you're building. And so it actually increases the emphasis of the people on your team, number one. Number two, what I'm also hoping, like many companies did the right way when they've gone through cost management or right sizing programs in the past, is that through efficiency comes availability of capital and capacity. And so they can invest those dollars back into the business and so scale the business. So you will get more jobs, but albeit different jobs.
yeah.
Right. And so my hope is, yes, it increases efficiency and there'll be lots of some of those sort of tactical potential jobs and it'll happen. And that's what it is. It's the reality, but it increases the value of the people that are around you. And hopefully it gives you more financial means to scale, add more people in the right places, because guess what? Your customers are people. At the end of the day, we're all serving people, whether you're in healthcare or CPG or construction, doesn't matter. Consumers are always going to be people. So bots are not going to be selling to bots. No
Right.
one's making. So, so I think
Well said.
that's why I get really excited. Yes, I understand, appreciate, and empathize on that level of like loss of jobs, 100%. But I really get excited by the fact that, well, hopefully the people are seeing that how can I then use the increase in cash flow as a result to reinvest and then also optimize the people that I've already got because they're the ones that are going to make it happen.
How does the future look for PQ? Looking ahead, how does 2026 look for you?
Really good question, man. I Look, I'm very excited about the book. I think my goal in 2026 is to spread the PQ. Effectively, I call it the PQ revolution, right? And it may be a very grand thing to say, but part of what you asked me earlier was like what fuels me, and what fuels
Yeah.
me is to also like make change happen, right? And change the way we think, change the way we behave and act. Not necessarily because what we're doing is wrong, but what we could be doing is better. And
Sure.
so for me, if PQ starts to become a global name, which it should, because fundamentally I'm talking about every single organization, small or large, dialing in three things. We're only talking about three things to dial in. So it's not like it's not like an ERP implementation that'll take 5 years. It's
Sure.
three things you can go and do. That to me is going to be amazing. How many companies and countries I'm going to touch, I don't know, but it's going to be as many as I can. And we're going to build an engine and make sure that it's very, very sticky, because ultimately it's not PQ like EQ and IQ are intrinsics. They define the character of a business. And from there, Phil, I don't know where it goes. And keep going is the plan.
Yeah, sounds great. I love your enthusiasm. I love your passion. My grandparents immigrated from Italy to the United States, and just that my growing up, my parents just worked really hard. That left an impression on me. I think I was raised with the value of serving others, and that was a segue for me getting into healthcare. Additionally, my dad is a veteran, and I think those things, and then as personally being an athlete and being passionate about the body, these things help shape my career. And I keep hearing from you, which I love, this desire to impact others. And you speak PE, you speak finance, from a financial perspective. Maybe tell us a little about maybe either your upbringing or what led you to get into finances initially, say, as opposed to engineering or medicine or something else. Maybe start there.
Yep. Yeah, no, great question. Look, my background coincidentally, I'm glad that you brought up your background. Look, I was born in India, and my dad was also military. Right? He had 21 years of service. He retired colonel in the U.S. terms, wing commander in the Royal Air Force terms. And so he was in the Indian Air Force. So I grew up in the military background, serving, and my mom was a teacher. Serving
Okay.
has always been part of our family conversation. It's part of the dialogue. It's part of the mindset, right? But the other thing was that, as you would know, and many others who've grown up in the military background, is you move around a lot. And so the downside of that, you don't have friends forever, but you have lots of friends,
Yeah.
and you get to learn how to make friends. And that's where I think my guess would be between the value system of serve and teach, and then, get to know people, because it doesn't matter who you get to know, because you know what? Everyone's equal. Everyone sort of can share something with you. India is full of cultures, as you know, like there's like lots and lots of different cultures and subcultures in India. And so, and languages and food and everything. And so effectively it's like traveling a mini world, and you've got to adapt, you've got to adopt, you've got to learn. And so that became part of our DNA. And so when we migrated to New Zealand, we didn't know anybody. My dad had no idea. We've never been there. And we didn't know, he didn't know where he was going to sleep when he landed. And so, and then the family came, and so on and so forth. And since then, I've now migrated 5 times, right? And so the idea is, for me, just echoing what you said, is the humanity, the people element, serving those value systems. That's just always been part of the DNA, and that's probably what's manifesting in everything I do. And coincidentally, I was an engineer, and so I started my career in engineering. But what I realized was that I wanted to be in a place where I can influence, and not only influence, but actually take the decisions behind the things I was doing. And so being in that leadership role would make a lot of sense. And that's why I sort of transitioned into business. Finance just happened to be a thing that I fell into. It was not a pre-desired version. As I said, my career started in consulting with McKinsey, but in that I fell into finance just because I'm a numbers guy.
Yeah.
And if you speak to me in equations, I'll understand a lot more than anything else.
Yeah.
So,
It's
so
funny.
it was just more a love for numbers, a love for, it's kind of like my professional spheres would be numbers and people, right? And so I've got, with people, the more important one. Numbers just tend to inform certain, choices as an investor that I can make.
I like what you're saying, man. And I get the sense too that despite you're a leader in your industry and you've retained some of these values that you shared that you were raised with of serving others. So it seems like you're in the right spot. It seems like things are lining up perfectly, and I'm excited for your future.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think, look, I always say to the leaders as well, and going back to leadership, is that you've got to start with your values, because it's very easy otherwise to get lost. And there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of like best practices, and you should do this, and they're
Yeah.
doing this. I think, and I too, as an entrepreneur, have found myself getting lost in that noise. But when you go back to the value system and what ultimately drives you, which is the question you asked, I think it's a really good question. I'd encourage everyone listening in on your behalf. I'd ask them to self reflect on that
Uh-huh.
question because absent that, I don't know what are we doing here. So
Yeah. What
there's
at
the
the end of
core
the day,
belief.
what's it all about? Yeah, definitely. I think personally for me, the way I've tried to I think my business has developed just from the ground up, and I think, I still retain the sense of wanting to serve others and making I've been a passionate healthcare worker for 20 years, um, and I think my focus has been on one predominantly on one patient, whether as a nurse or as a nurse practitioner, and now as an entrepreneur, I see that same value, but in a larger context of how can I impact others by supporting businesses that are serving
Yeah,
others.
it's great. I love it.
As a financial leader, I know you've worked with people in the healthcare industry. Can you share some insights on leadership and performance as it pertains to the healthcare industry, maybe from people that you've worked with?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think what I'm seeing in the healthcare space is a huge amount of transformation in the way they serve customers. Right. The good news about everything we're discussing as relates to healthcare is that ultimately we're serving the patients. Right. The patient outcomes is what matters. Whether you're in the front lines or you're in a B2B to C or a B2C business,
Sure.
as long as you're in the healthcare space. And so it'll always come down to people. And technology and investments are all ways to improve patient outcomes, improve customer service or patient service. So there's a huge amount of development in that space. With AI coming in, a lot of companies are able to scale their service offerings very quickly, which I think benefits the patients a lot more. So whether you're attacking type 2 diabetes or whether you're looking at rehab work or whether you're doing patient follow-ups, I know you do a lot of work in that space where helping companies scale rapidly to provide that service. I think to me, that's where fundamentally the shift's going to happen in healthcare, where I'm always driven by, going back to what we're just going, how do we impact lives of people? And I think healthcare is the epitome of that. There's no other industry that you can argue does that as much as healthcare does. And so, in terms of your second part of your question about leadership, look, it always starts with leadership teams, what their vision and mission is, and how clear are they about that. It's the what are they solving for.
Yeah.
I think the what I am seeing from a lot of friends and colleagues who are in healthcare space, either as investors or as operators, is that the companies that are led by people who have absolute clarity on what the ultimate impact is on patient outcome are the ones that are winning. That doesn't mean they're winning today. That doesn't mean that everything takes time, but they are winning. They've already won or they're going to win, right? And so what I mean by that is they're the ones that are actually getting more pull from the market. And going back to our previous conversations about building businesses, I think healthcare is a perfect example where you've got to pay attention to the needs of the people. And those companies that have got the leadership teams that think that way and are building teams underneath them, building systems, building technology that delivers on that mission are the ones that are going to win. And I think there are plenty of examples of that. So we won't go into that. But what I am seeing is that it does come down to the leadership team that you're building around you, how tied they are to the mission of the business. And so it's a little more of a nuanced lens in healthcare because of the fact that every business has a very specific purpose within healthcare, but it definitely ties back to the value system that we were talking about a few minutes ago.
I recognize I'm kind of zigzagging here, but I'm going to proceed regardless. When you finish working with your clients, what do you hope that they say? What do you hope that they have gained when you walk away from your when you consulted with them, establish your plan, completed it, and then get ready to move on? What's your hope that they
Look, at a personal level, I really hope that they say that, they really enjoyed the process, because what I'm inherently doing is by design, because I have that M&A due diligence mindset, and I'm appreciative and respectful of the fact that people have less time. You've got to still build relationships. Ultimately, this is all about relationships. And so for me, what's rewarding is when, despite some of the tricky conversations, because when you're discussing people, leadership, organization, incentives, inevitably these become, tricky to navigate. So despite self-reflective, not everyone wants to be self-reflective, as
This is true.
CEOs sometimes sometimes find that uncomfortable, right? Not everyone, but some do. And so whatever the scenario be, if as long as they've actually on a personal level enjoyed the conversation, at a professional level, we've created value. For me, this is all about ROI It's all about increasing profitability, EBITDA. And so them working with me is an investment in me, but really it's investment in their own company, right? So for me, if I can deliver on that investment, that I find really rewarding. Because again, being a finance guy, it's got to come back to making financial sense as well. Right. And the third thing is that I actually really find when I hear stories is that they're actually making change happen. And so, what I don't want to do, and the reason I built this business is that whatever I do, I want to have the impact now, like sooner rather than later, whether it is, hey, let's go hire somebody, let's help people develop, let's, reshape the structure of the organization, let's turbocharge the way we attract our talent. To me, having operational impact now is what is most satisfying, which then leads to the improvement in financials, which overall leads to having a good end product with the leadership teams. That's how I think about it. Those are the three buckets, at a
Mhm.
personal level and two at the professional level. But I want to see impact. I want to see change happen. And that's when people's like, man, either you confirm what I was already thinking, you've told me something that I wasn't thinking before at all. So I was like, wow, we've made that happen. Or quite frankly, you know what? This has given me a big toolkit that I'm never going to forget. And even if they don't work with me, because again, my goal is not to stick around in the business forever and ever. My goal is to have impact because there's millions of businesses that I want to go touch. And so I take pride in speed to action and longevity in their business, not in mine. So that's the goal.
Not to turn to gossip, but do egos get in the way of when you're maybe I imagine, like in medicine, you have to have sometimes uncomfortable conversations and maybe cast light on something that an outsider seeing that people inside. It amazes me in the medical world what we adapt to, how amazing the human body is, and I'll ask somebody, "How long you been doing that?" Or "How long?" Well, this is just how I walk. Or I always have this cough. I'm like, well, that's not normal. Like how long? What we adapt to, and maybe you're providing shedding some light on these conversations that are perhaps uncomfortable.
Yeah, ego comes into play all the time. We all have egos. Babies have egos. I've got a tiny baby at home, and he's got an ego. So
Right.
I think the reality is egos are something we're born with. Ego is not necessarily a bad thing because sometimes it helps check you a little bit. But what's more important is to actually be aware of it and how it's manifesting and what it is doing. And not everyone is aware of it. And so I think what ends up happening in these conversations is the presence of ego reveals itself pretty quickly. And I think the interesting place where conversations can go is that, when you're talking about redesigning leadership teams, I sort of go back to like, what are we solving for, right? In the companies, whether it's an underwriting of an investment or growth strategy. But to your question, it's very interesting to see how much of what they do is driven by their self-service, right? And so by having a conversation about the company, not the person, actually helps remove ego slowly because it is no longer about what I want as the CEO or what I want as an investor. It's about what's in the best interest of the business, what's in the best interest of the company. And so I'm able to have those conversations because of that. I think we got, my goal is not to do anything with someone's ego, like to reduce it. That's not my goal. My goal is to help the company. And so as long as I can help separate that, what's needed for the company versus what's needed for self, I think we're making progress. And so to me, that's the key. Now, some CEOs are extremely self-aware and they also know they have got big egos. So they're self-aware about their big egos, but they don't know how to check it. That's a more tactical, problem solving session. But I think for the most part, what I try to do is just observe where egos are at play and how much of their ego is getting in their own way of their own vision and mission. Right. And I think that's the key piece where people, almost everybody, if you have a big ego, you definitely want to be, wanting to say, well, hang on, how does that? It's underserving me. What else can I do? And if you have big ego and you'll realize that it's not helping their mission in scaling the business, then that's also good for the business. So either way, it helps, but it is a tricky conversation to have.
Yeah, and I appreciate your thorough answer. I understand. Maybe I was trying to highlight the complexity of what you do whenever you're working with people. There's
So is
stuff to
the
navigate. Rohit, thank you so much for coming on. I'm really enjoying our conversation. Where can people go to learn more about you and your services and your book?
Yeah, so my website is called p-quotient.com. And so on that website, you can find out all about me. There is a personal website also, which is rohit-bassi.com. We'll share all of this where you can also find about me more at a personal level. I've got a podcast, which is the People Quotient podcast that's on YouTube as well as Spotify and Apple, and recently released a leadership series. I just interviewed the former head of Twitter India, who's now a VC. And so there's some interesting people sharing their perspectives on how to scale businesses and build high performing teams. But those are the assets that you can go check out. And again, the book's coming out on St. Patty's Day, The People Priority. And right now there's no pre-sales, but you can definitely reserve your copy on any of those websites that I mentioned, which would be great.
Fantastic. Congratulations to you, Rohit, on your growing family, your growing business, and really appreciate you spending some time with us today on the HealthCast. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to actually talk to me as well as invite me on the podcast. And I've enjoyed the conversation. Really appreciate it. And good luck and to you in your scaling business as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. All
Yes.
right. Well, this concludes today's episode for the HealthCast. Stay tuned for the next one. Thanks, guys.